Before you is the Assembly Memorandum for the certification of the election, and we started transitioning last year in how we presented this report. So the first part is a report from the clerk's office. Sorry. The first part is a report from the clerk's office, and it just discusses the election and processing voters on election day. And the second part of the report is the part from the canvas, or from the commission, which specifically deals with the rejected ballots.
First of all, I'd just like to say, so the voter turnout, which we didn't know, but was almost 25%?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were really excited about that. I think you can see an upward trend since 2013. I think 2013, there's a few minor glitches that impact it. One is the data of the voter registration that was entered before the state's purge, which is something that we've learned recently, that they purge every year, and so we're able to get more accurate information then. And then, but we're really excited. We just keep seeing more folks engaged in the municipal election process year to year.
And I think I think insiders know that that is a personal goal that Amanda has set for herself to increase voter turnout. She's worked really hard with branding and outreach, Facebook, Twitter, the vote in your pajamas that she did one year, really pushing absentee by mail, the drop box. What a shocker this year that 124 people used the drop box. Amanda prepared a flyer that went out in all of the absentee by mail envelopes. And so I think that increase really is attributable to Amanda's efforts and the importance that she's expressed to people about how important it is to be involved in municipal elections and local issues. So good job.
So I will say, when I started in the clerk's office, election turnout was around 20%, 19% a couple years, and so it has been a pretty dramatic increase. Specifically, over the last couple of years, 2014, we saw a jump from what we had seen before that. And then,
Yeah, it looks like it was 23.5, and then it went up to almost 25, so.
And this year, it would be interesting if you could say that although the tax cap issue was interesting, I think overall, I know we're on the record, and I will just say it was a little bit ho-hum. It was too complicated for a lot of people to understand. There was not a big campaign for it. There was not a big campaign against it. I don't think that issue drove this increase in voter turnout. Sometimes I think you can look at the issues that are on the ballot and we understand that those are drivers. I don't think that was this time.
Interestingly enough, when I was looking at which races had the most votes, which I always think is really the indicator, and I think that I first started looking at in 2012 of really trying to understand what was driving people to the polls, and it looked like, to me, when I looked at that, the real big thing on the ballot was, interestingly enough, Prop 5, which is the road prop, had more engagement than any of the other items on the ballot. And that's just, I think, Prop 8, we did get a lot of phone calls on election day. It was complicated. People were not able to specifically understand the issue from just reading the language on the ballot, was the feedback we got from voters on election day. But I guess Prop 5 and Prop
8, isn't it?
Well, Prop 8 had less voter engagement. Maybe Prop 6 had more than Prop 5.
50.
Just barely. Prop 6
Yeah,
beats it.
just below.
So.
Well, and I think your comment too about the caucus right before, even though I think there are more people concerned about elections than there have been for a while.
I think the caucuses and primaries nationwide are really calling a lot of attention to elections, and I think in a good way. I think that the conversation that happened after Arizona's primary is important. We should make sure that we are aware of how we are serving voters as election administrators and make sure that we are able to serve as many voters who want to turn out. And I think that is one of the challenges that we face in our election, because we often don't have very high voter engagement. And so if we do see spikes, we have to be in a position that we're able to react to that. And I think it's an important reminder to always, as election administrators, always hold dear.
Well, and I think you're streamlining it. I don't think there were ballots lost this time.
We worked really hard on a couple different things this election cycle. First was to really hone in on our procedures and make sure that we were following them. Second was to really evaluate the flow of items and where things were going to be processed. And I think that was a huge help to be able to understand that. And third, just handoffs, number of handoffs, and trying to lessen that. And Nina's crew took on a large amount of extra work in order to be able to limit the number of handoffs and help our flow. And I think that made all the difference, as Nina and her crew really, I think, stepped up this election cycle.
I know when we did it before, we were always moving the the ballot envelopes from one place to another during the day. As it was up, did they always stay in the mail boardroom?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's a perfect idea, to have them always in the same place. They didn't have to be trucked up and down the hallway or through City Hall like we
They
were
were
doing.
always there, and they only moved to another spot when they were ready to be tabulated. So they would be put in the tieback envelopes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So.
So your report is on the third page, and this is where we'll get your signatures and submit this to the assembly. And this was, in the past, this hasn't had any text on it, but we added the text at the top that talks about the public session of Canvas and what you did.
Okay.
So we have the original here. We'll get a signature for you before the assembly meeting, but I think we'll just maybe need a motion to
I see a mistake on here.
the 328.
Yeah.
So we'll get that fixed
Okay,
before we get it signed.
all right. It says 328 up here and 329 down
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Just reading it over.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom of the report where we've got the total rejected, we know that we'll be sending that notice of rejection to those voters, and we discussed that at we discussed it several times.
Mhm.
So none went out before, is that true?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I think this year, just because of the different way that we did things, I think the pressure was really on to get those, to identify those rejected ballots.
Yes.
And I think
Double check them,
triple check them.
triple.
And because of that, we just didn't have time to get those notices out ahead of time.
And the code doesn't stipulate they have to go out before.
That is correct.
And that is a practice that we haven't always done in the clerk's office. We started doing it a couple years ago, and I think that there's benefits to both ways of doing it, but I think it allows the commission and our election officials to really do a thorough review, which I think that there's some benefit to that, and I think that we are able to catch our own mistakes in that way, and that is what we did with the double and triple check, is a really very thorough review of all of the rejects. And it just puts, I think there was in the past a lot of pressure to get those letters out and to make sure we got them out in a timely fashion, that maybe put pressure on both the commission and our election officials to hurry up with the review. And I think it was helpful to not have that additional pressure on both the commissioners and the election officials.
And then oddly, get a criticism for sending the letters out too late for people to make it to the canvas anyway. So it was kind of like you.
Couldn't win it either way you did it. So we sort of erred on the side of a more thoughtful review.
Well, I suppose the real question then is, what is the purpose of the canvass? Just to give a report to the city?
The purpose of the canvass is to give the report of the rejected ballots.
Mhm.
So the voters who attempted to vote, and because they are not qualified, those ballots will not be included with the rest of the election results. That is part of the clerk's office
Mhm.
report.
So basically, Jim, the commission reviewed for 10 days, a week and a half.
Mhm.
You reviewed all of those question ballots. You remember we called them pending rejected, and you set them aside, and I saw you re-reviewing them, and I know
Mhm.
Barbara said she re-initialed them, and then I think you did it again, and then all of those, I know some didn't make it to the final cut, but then all of the ones that were left ended up at the public canvas.
Mhm.
And that's the adjudicatory function of the commission when you made a motion and a second and a majority voted in favor of rejecting these ballots.
Mhm.
So the purpose of that, in my opinion, is that the creators of the municipality did not want just election administrators, Amanda and I, to make those decisions to reject ballots. They wanted, people who have elections experience, but who are citizens to make those decisions. And that's what you did at the public canvas.
Mhm.
Now, we could have had this report for you to prepare at the public canvas, and you could have signed it that night. The problem is, you've added
Just one.
one more. So remember, Amanda told you if any mail came in after Thursday, those would be added to that, and that was the one. And that's why it seemed to work best to wait until
Mhm.
today to do that.
So, and this was, the canvas is actually notified to the public through the newspaper.
It is not noticed in the paper because we're not required to do that anymore. I
So
think they
where is
changed
it-
that
where
years
is it
ago.
noticed?
It's noticed on the public notice website. It's noticed where all public meetings are noticed. We noticed on the commission's page. We noticed
Sent out a
it
press release.
press release
Okay.
and on a couple. It's
Yeah.
noticed on about 3 places on the website, and we did the press release.
The one vote that came in, did it have anything to do with,
We
Berkeley?
didn't even look.
That's right.
So it was postmarked after?
Election day.
Okay, that's what I didn't
so-
get out of the conversation.
I'm
I
Okay.
didn't either.
So it
Okay.
came in as an addition to the rejected.
Because it was postmarked. Okay, so
Okay.
that's where the total number
So it's one of
changed.
those 28.
So I may have misunderstood, or maybe I didn't hear it correctly, but Amanda, what you said about the purpose of the canvas, and then what you said, for my own understanding, it made more sense, the further explanation that you gave, that we met as a commission, that we heard the report, we made a motion, and we basically approved the work of the commission and our work. And that the purpose of the canvas was to have a meeting to do that work. And you may have said that, but I didn't catch it. But that, for me, for other people that may want to know what's the canvas for, well, that's the bottom line, that we have a meeting, we approve the report after we make a motion and sign.
See,
We don't sign, but.
prior to this year, I thought it was to give people a chance to say, oh, but my vote should count.
They can, and that it is still an opportunity to do that. You know, when we've had observers watching, they've come specifically knowing who they think should count or not count. We didn't have active observers engaged, so it is for people, it's for the commission to present their report of the no counts, and it's for the public to weigh in and say, this vote should count, this vote shouldn't count. And we
Okay.
have had very little public engagement over the years. We've had some engagement from the letters. We've had some engagement from observers who've contacted voters and told them to come out. And
It was just that one year.
Well, and I think that Amanda is exactly right, because remember those observers that were looking over your shoulders,
Mhm.
and there were two things that they did, if I remember. There were votes that you counted that were not in here. You approved them, and remember, they challenged votes that you counted. And so they filled out the challenge sheet, and we brought those to the meeting, and you voted on those and counted them. But they didn't want some of those to count. But then Amanda's also right that if you recall, they were looking over your shoulder and saw a name that you were going to reject. And if you remember, they called that individual, and that individual showed up. And I remember one in particular, and I think you voted to include her count. I think there were others that you didn't. I remember that one guy went out yelling and screaming at you, but that's part of it, is that those challenges are part of that, but how do they get there? That there's no requirement for us to say
Okay, see, I'd
ahead
always
of
thought it
time.
was the letters and then they.
And that's why I asked that question earlier. I think that there are going to be, if I can think about next year, there are going to be some questions that will be coming up because of a by-mail vote next year of those that are rejected. And they're going to want to know what your procedure is. And so I think, and I can see what we're talking about here, it might be kind of hard to explain where one year you send out letters and the next year you didn't. So I'm just giving you a heads up. I can see that coming up.
I can imagine.
Well, let me just finish for a second. So I can see that coming up. One of the things that we did in Minneapolis when we had our canvass is we were required to notify the candidates. Now, I don't know if you do that, but I think that's an excellent idea.
Notify the candidates about the
The
public.
canvass,
Okay.
about the public canvass, because the candidates are the ones that are keeping, kind of track of what's going on. And so we were required, not in addition to having the public notice, which we noticed similar to, whatever our requirements were, but we also were required to send letters to the candidates.
And so, Joyce, we can talk about that more, but the letter to the candidates was just to say this is when the public canvass
Yes,
is
all we did was
happening.
we were
Okay.
required to notice about the public candidates. We were also required, when we tested all of the equipment, to notify all the candidates that we were testing the equipment, and they could show up to view that as well. So we had some different requirements that involved not just the public notice, but more individual notice. So, and that's all I was going to say, because I can see that coming up next year when there's going to be a by mail, and I can tell you, I think we're going to certainly have more than maybe 329, depending on what's going on the envelope and everything like that, but it's just a comment, so.
And just to respond, we are closely observing current vote by mail jurisdictions, including Washington, Oregon, and Colorado.
I was just going to ask later too.
And one of the things that I really appreciate that they do in all those jurisdictions is that they're communicating with voters throughout. So in Washington, King County specifically, if a signature comes back and it doesn't match or it's not signed, they notify the voter right away, and they have a period to cure those up until certification. So even up until
Okay.
right before certification, voters could be coming in and re-signing and doing stuff like that. So I anticipate as we move forward, we will want to make sure to keep in line with our current every vote counts as much as we can, we would want to include some of those procedures to address that.
And like I said, I can just see, based on what we're talking about, I can just see some questions down the road, so I just wanted to throw out a couple.
I think the streamlining that you've done makes it so that this is, I mean, to me, this is so much more, I'm just real confident that those really didn't count.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's good that we've got that streamlining going. Then we move into the by mail, it's gonna, you know, that same thing is gonna really make a big difference.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And one, can I just have an aside comment not related to this at all, since I might forget it, you know, we get old. We do need to have more commissioners, and I don't know whose role it is to, whether it's, you know, the clerk's office to try to do that, or whether it's the mayor's office. I would assume not the mayor's office, because they have all of the boards and commissions, but I feel, and I think every one of us, we've talked about this, feel it's very important to have a full complement on the commission, and I don't know what can be done. I know through the League of Women Voters, we did put a notice out to all our members, but at that point, it was a real commitment when I had sent it out, not what it is now, so that might be different for somebody, but I would like to put a push in to have some sort of a PR of some sort campaign or something, or however you want to, word you want to use to try to get commissioner seats
I think
filled.
that's a great idea. I'll tell you that when I was the executive director of the Equal Rights Commission, part of the commission's strategic plan, they had their goals and staff had its goals. And one of their goals was a full complement.
Mhm.
So I would suggest that it's a mutual goal. Both the commission and the staff have this mutual goal to make sure that the commission is fully staffed. And so what I would like to suggest, one way that we could address it is, I think you should probably set up a meeting soon, because you don't have anything else going on, and we can address this, hopefully, like in June. And then in June, we have, the biggest issue that we've got is, Amanda and I know, we've had a couple people that were proposed to serve as commissioners, and the problem was that they didn't have election experience.
Mhm.
So we need to talk what type of election experience is going to be required, if that's required, and number two, what are the work hours? So it's my understanding that you're all retired, and except Jim, I know you're working a couple
Part-time.
part-time. And so that is a barrier to participation. And so I think those are two issues that we need to talk about.
I think we need to determine what the commission's role will be with the by-mail election, so that we're able to have a sense of what the hourly requirement is. And I know, looking at the way that Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, their commission functions very differently from ours. And if we're going to transition more to that model where the commission comes in specifically to do the no counts.
What state was that you said?
Well, so specifically King County in
Oh, it wasn't
Washington,
King, okay.
they have, the commission is made up of like a lawyer, maybe like a district attorney, and they have come in for like an hour and just review all the no counts. And so we, I think, need to understand moving forward, because, you know, there's no way that the commission can review 100,000, 50,000 ballots, but what the role is. And one of the challenges we had this year was we didn't have enough election workers, and we couldn't bear to lose any election workers to become commissioners, because we were short-staffed in a large number of precincts before Election Day, and then, you know, I think 8 people got sick on Election Day. So we had no capacity this year to lose any election workers to come join the commission.
So would it be possible next year if they're not going to the precincts?
We'll have capacity next
Okay.
year, but that is one of the challenges that we had this year, because we did start reaching out to folks, and then as soon as we realized they were serving as chairs and we didn't have any other chairs, we knew we couldn't lose.
And I know, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the one name I did submit, she is an election worker.
Yeah.
I don't know if it didn't show up on her paperwork or not, but, when she applied.
Yeah.
And then another thing, just while you're talking about that, I, know of a person who's been an election worker for a long time, had the flu, the really bad flu, during the training session, and so they told her not to work, which I would think that, you know, in a situation where you're really short of people, having some kind of like, her chair offered to come in and, I mean, sit down with her and go over it, and she was somebody who was quite experienced. Anyway,
I think
there are
it's
just a few, that doesn't happen very often. but-
It does. It happens
We
a
had
lot.
38 people who did not make it to training, and we sent them letters because we cover things in training each year, and things don't come up all the time, and it's
Yeah.
really important to have everybody in the room, and what one person picks up in training might be different from another person, so we do need the whole body to be there at trainings to hear these things. And I will say, even it was really painful, though there was 2 special needs ballots that we had to reject because the signature on the representative did not match the signature on the witness representative. That is something that I know that I said in every single training class, and we still had to reject 2 votes for that. And so, and just the idea of having workers out there, even if they've been long-term, there's so many things that just come up rarely or occasionally, and it's
And yet, I mean, I think the other side of it, being her advocate a little bit, is that she probably would have handled situations much better than someone who had never been in that precinct before or who was a new precinct worker. And, you know, I don't know if that's something to work on, you know, having an alternative.
An alternative
thing.
might be like if we tried once to videotape the training. It was really hard for people when we did the video training because it's a 2 or 3 hour training. But a 2 or 3 hour training that's interactive, where there's demonstrations,
yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
But on the video, it was,
and
it was terrible.
And I think, you know, she really wanted to come in, but you wouldn't have wanted her there during the training.
Well, you wouldn't want to get everybody sick.
No. No.
But,
you know, the other thing-
But
this
at
happens.
least you'll have
Yeah, those
a
things
base.
happen.
Because I can't think of, I've been trying to think of someone, and everybody I know's already done it.
yeah.
I was going to say, the thing to think about too is, I hate to keep bringing up my past experiences, but even when I was working for the legislature and we did ethics training, those that couldn't attend an in-person class, we had a video. I did a video. I went to a studio and did a video. And then at the end of it, they had to answer questions. And if they didn't answer the questions, they didn't pass.
that's a great idea.
You know, and not only
Make it
that, they had
work.
to sign on with their sign-on, like your email user name. So they were the ones that went in and did that, you know, would do that. And if they didn't answer those questions, well, then they'd take it again.
But I think those are some great ideas. So right now,
Sorry,
I think we need
maybe
to
this is
gather-
something for a meeting we can
I think
have.
we need to
Yeah.
gather information regarding the commission members. I think Amanda is right. We need to look at what other jurisdictions are doing. We need to look at the barriers that are current to people joining this commission. And then we need to make some recommendations to go forward. And we certainly don't have to decide, but we can get that conversation started. So we'll talk to Joyce about some dates, maybe in June or July, to get that going.
Yeah, because the sooner you get someone thinking about it and ready to commit, then they
Excuse
won't
me.
have all their plans set up and it'll be in their plans.
Great. So I will get this typo corrected, and then we'll go ahead and get signatures from the commissioners
Okay?
on
Do
that.
you want me to sign as it's here or my legal name
I-
with a PH?
Because his
Well,
name
we
is-
definitely want you to sign your legal name.
We'll make that adjustment too.
Yeah,
Sorry
thank
about
you.
that.
That's all right.
Okay.
That happens more often than not.
And
But-
I am going to excuse myself a little bit early from this meeting and go get ready for the assembly meeting.
When do you